Pride and Prejudice fans out there? I know there are. If you're one of them, today's episode is for you. We're talking about INTJs in love or the Mr. Darcy problem. If you're not sure what an INTJ is and want to know more, check out the video I did on Game of Thrones when I talk about the Myers-Briggs types. The INTJ is the one that's most likely to be the villain in the story, most likely to be the mad scientist, or most likely to be the narcissist in a book. Does that sound like Mr. Darcy? Not really, but there are some parallels. Villains, mad scientists, and narcissists aren't known for their people skills, and neither is Mr. Darcy. He doesn't get people, doesn't do emotions, and socializing is painful for him. So, what do you do when you're that guy? And what do you do if you're the girl who is in love with that guy? We're going to discover that today. So, stay tuned until the end because I'm going to give you a bullet list of what it's like to love an INTJ. If you like the show or the channel, please leave me a comment, share it, or subscribe to the channel. If I get enough comments, maybe I will cover Elizabeth Bennet because, like I say over and over, tell me your favorite character or your favorite movie, and I'll tell you who you are. Before we get into Darcy, let's review the traits of an INTJ. So I stands for introvert. This means you recharge alone, and Darcy is definitely not a social butterfly like Bingley, and he doesn't light up when there is company. He's very reserved, which is common for INTJs. And is for intuitive. So intuitives focus on abstract concepts and future possibilities rather than concrete details and present experiences. They do see the big picture and prefer to generate ideas rather than implement them. T is for thinking versus feeling. Thinking people are objective and logical. They can see inconsistency and flaws easily. They're fair and value truth over text. So you can see why love would be difficult for an INTJ. Love doesn't make sense. And J is for judging. J's like structure and closure. They like routines, organization, and avoid surprises. They control for drama by preventing it through efficiency and taking care of things before allowing themselves to relax. So they're responsible people that you can depend upon. The INTJ is punctual, imaginative, demanding, detached, dignified, secretive, serious, intellectual, ethical, aloof, complex, self-disciplined, versatile, reserved, contemplative, demanding, and inquisitive. On paper, that isn't typically the person anybody would think of who sets a girl's heart on fire. And yet, Mr. Darcy has been a heartthrob for 200 years. Why? It's a really interesting question because the first few times I saw this movie, I asked myself this question too. I was like, why is this jerk a prize? And the answer that I came up with, I think, applies to a lot of people. Darcy doesn't give first good impressions. He comes across as arrogant, but he thinks he's better than everyone else, and he's just full of himself. But as time goes on, you start to see the layers underneath. He's complicated, and there's a lot beneath his layers. He's intriguing, and he invites you to linger and try to figure it out. So, in other words, he's a little fascinating. And he's not the I saw you from across the room and I knew you'd be my future wife kind of gal or guy. He's a slow burn. Nothing he does is impulsive but calculated. So he makes you believe that he means everything he says. It's not a silly whim with him, but deep, heartfelt, and caring. On the surface, one might think that every girl wants to bag the rich guy, but underneath, I think it's really more about every girl wants to bag the guy who will love her with that level of commitment and truth. In many love stories, the guy falls for the pretty girl. She doesn't have anything to do with it. She just happens to be pretty. So to be chosen when you're not the prettiest, not the most talented, and not the hottest, but just because you're you, well, that's the highest compliment of all. So yeah, I think we all want to be loved like that. So let's walk through the story and see the INTJ love affair unfold. The Bennet girls first meet Mr. Darcy at the Meryton ball. So Darcy is there with Mr. Bingley and his sisters. And Darcy's standing there looking all imperious, not talking to anyone and refusing to dance, even though there are plenty of women without partners. And Elizabeth overhears him say that he finds her tolerable and her pride is wounded. So why is he acting like this? Because he's not particularly comfortable in social settings. He wants everything to have a use, and he's not there to do business, find a wife, or for any purpose at all. So he's not really excited about being with people he doesn't find interesting. He doesn't dance, so he's basically tolerating the whole thing because he's Bingley's guest. So it's not personal. He's just kind of checked out. He says that Elizabeth is tolerable for two reasons. First, that's his truth. Second, he's cautious and uncomfortable. That's his nature. He's not trying to be cruel. He's not making any judgments about her, just her appearance. And to be fair, she's not the fairest one. Her sister is. It is what it is. To give it more thought than that would really be uncomfortable because he's going down a road that he just can't even entertain because it doesn't make sense. He's a man with 10,000 a year, and here's these people with nothing. It's just not the done thing. And so she's not really a blip on his radar, mostly. So INTJs can seem really aloof and even rude if you don't know them. They're better with people that they know and better in small crowds. So the cards are stacked against Darcy, but he doesn't care. He doesn't see anything at stake here. Now, when Elizabeth comes to Netherfield to be with her sick sister, Darcy gets to spend time with her on his terms and on his turf. So it's a small gathering in a space where he feels comfortable and it's his playing field. So he maintains his distance, but watches her and listens to her. And he finds her wit amusing and interesting because she's unconventional. So unlike Caroline Bingley, she actually has something to say that's worth listening to. And this is a great way to get an INTJ's attention. So he watches and maintains his distance, but not because he's thinking that she's not good enough for me, but because he's giving himself space and time to figure out his feelings and rationalize them before acting on them. And Darcy would never want his sister to appear in this way that she does with the disheveled hair and the mud on her hem, the way Elizabeth does when she comes to Netherfield. But something stirs in him when he sees Elizabeth in this way, and he admires her independence, integrity, and intelligence. He thinks the color in her cheeks from the weather highlights the twinkles in her eyes, and Caroline Bingley is absolutely horrified. But this is because Caroline doesn't get it. Caroline ensnares with her looks, her breeding, her charms, her fine manners. An INTJ is probably going to fall in love with your mind first. And if you're as guarded and correct as Caroline Bingley, nobody's ever going to see it. But Elizabeth Bennet doesn't have that reservation. She's outspoken and has passionate ideas, and this stirs Darcy's heart and creates an insane inner conflict. His heart wants one thing, but his logic is saying her family's an embarrassment, she has no money or social standing, a match between us makes no sense at all. Still, he can't help himself. He has to have her. So he goes to visit her at the parsonage at Rosings Park. She thinks they hate each other, so she's surprised to see him there. And in true clueless INTJ form, he hastily asks about her health and doesn't even notice that she's barely civil. And he sits there in silence, walks around the room like he's thinking about something, then finally says, "In vain I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." Shocker. So you know she could have been knocked over by a feather. It's the last thing she's expecting. She's not seen one clue that this is what's brewing underneath the surface. Then he goes on, "In declaring myself thus, I am fully aware that I will be going expressly against the wishes of my family, my friends, and I hardly need add my own better judgment. The relative situation of our families is such that any alliance between us must be regarded as a highly reprehensible connection. Indeed, as a rational man, I cannot but regard it as such myself, and it cannot be helped. Almost from the earliest moments of our acquaintance, I have come to feel for you a passionate admiration and regard, which, despite my struggles, has overcome every rational objection, and I beg you most fervently to relieve my suffering and consent to be my wife." It is absolutely the worst proposal of all time. And yet, it is classic INTJ thinking. And those thoughts are best kept to himself because what do you think happens? Of course, she refuses him. What else could she do with a proposal like that? He basically kisses her on one cheek and slaps her on the other. It's hideous. Again, though, he's not trying to insult her. He's just being way too transparent about his thoughts and feelings. INTJs don't tend to have a lot of social intelligence and they don't know how to filter. So if you ask them a question, you're likely to get an honest answer. And Darcy was honest. This is why they don't tend to date a lot. They just don't know how. It's frustrating and they don't get the nuances and boundaries. Darcy's proposal reveals not only his own internal thought process, it's what he is hoping she would do in deciding whether to have him. His comfort zone in love is through reason, weighing the pros and cons and making a wise choice. Once he commits, he's all in, but this can seem calculating and cold. For him, it's not. It's an expression of his true heart. But Elizabeth refuses him because she doesn't love him and because of his clumsy, insulting co-proposal. That's not the only reason, though. Her sister has a crush on Bingley. It seemed like he also liked her, and Darcy came between them. Elizabeth can't forgive him for being so judgmental, meddlesome, and heartless. She despises him for that. Now, for an INTJ, no means no. So Darcy wouldn't continue to pursue her after she said no. But remember that I said that an INTJ values dignity? Well, Darcy told Bingley that he didn't think Jane cared for him because she didn't express any emotions. Fancy that. Darcy's the king of the resting bitch face, and he calls Jane out for the same thing. Well, after Elizabeth says that Jane is just shy, he understood and he wants to correct the wrong because he does have pride. He doesn't want to be the one that's causing someone else's suffering because of an error on his part. So he gives up on Lizzie, but he does correct the wrong. Now, Lizzie and her aunt and uncle are visiting Derbyshire and stopping in on Mr. Darcy's place, Pemberley. And she has no idea how stunning it is. And at first glance of it, she begins to change her mind about what it would be like to be Mrs. Darcy. In today's world, that sounds like she would be wooed by his money. But in those days, the size and beauty of the estate was more of a reflection on how well he took care of the people who ran it. It's a testament to his skill and temperament as a guardian. The house and the grounds are natural, fine, but not pretentious or overly ornate. Everything's tasteful, and Lizzie's admiration grows when the housekeeper speaks well of him, and then his sister. They speak of him with warmth, respect, and characteristics Lizzie hasn't even seen before, but she believes them because they're closest to him. Then Mr. Darcy comes home, and Elizabeth gets to see him in his own element and is astonished at how she's misjudged him. His stiffness is gone. He's polite and soft, and she's absolutely befuddled. Darcy invites her uncle over to go fishing, and the next day Bingley arrives and he invites her back for dinner. And this is when Jane's letter arrives, informing Lizzie that Lydia has eloped. And this is where Mr. Darcy shines. In running off with Mr. Wickham, Lydia has disgraced the family and ruined the chances of her four sisters marrying because nobody is going to want to be associated with a disgraced family. So she basically solidifies their future as spinsters and outcasts. Elizabeth doesn't like that, but she also doesn't like that her father is now in the position of having to defend Lydia's honor and maybe put at risk as well. So she's beside herself. All of this is revealed as Darcy is standing there, and he quickly excuses himself in a true, abrupt, cold, businesslike INTJ fashion, and Elizabeth thinks that he doesn't want to be tainted by association with her. That's not what's going on at all. So Darcy is actually more in love with Elizabeth than ever. Seeing her at his house has solidified that she's the only one for him, and he can't stop himself. He loves her, and he wants to make her life as easy and comfortable as possible, whether she wants to be with him or not. So he tracks Wickham down, makes him an offer that he can't refuse, and sees Lydia married to him, thus saving the Bennet girl's reputation and potentially her father's life. This is how the INTJ loves. It's acts of service. They're protective. They do what needs to be done without fanfare and without accepting credit. At this point, Darcy doesn't believe Elizabeth loves him. Quite the opposite. He thinks that she despises him, and this isn't an attempt to win her back. It's just him being true to himself. His proposal was awkward because INTJs don't do words. They aren't eloquent. They aren't soft or emotional. They're A strange combination of dreamy and practical. So Darcy cleaning up Lydia's elopement is just his way of taking responsibility for one more thing that might cause the Bennets harm. Because the way he sees it, had he told them about Wickham's nasty reputation, it may have saved Lydia from making a poor choice. Integrity is everything to an INTJ. Fixing what's broken, taking responsibility is something that he would do even if he thought Elizabeth never wanted to see him again. And this is what opens the door for her change of heart. So once Lydia slips and tells them all that Darcy was at her wedding, and Darcy's aunt comes knocking, asking if Elizabeth is engaged to Darcy, she knows that Darcy still cares for her. And when Lady Catherine tells him that Elizabeth would not promise to never be engaged to him, now he knows too, and he has hope. So the coolest thing about Mr. Darcy is that he's attentive. He listens. He judges the information that he receives impartially and either files it away, acts on it, or uses it in some way later. He thought about all the things that Elizabeth said about him and realized that she had a point. He was rude and proud. So he couldn't be mad at her for telling the truth. He used that information to change what was in his power to change so that he didn't alienate people. He prided himself on being a gentleman, and it cut him that he didn't appear so to her. So he changed. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a common INTJ trait. So Mr. Darcy doesn't have a plan to propose again. She said no, remember? But they are talking, and he sees an opening, and he says to her, "If your feelings are the same as they were last April, tell me so at once. My affections and wishes are unchanged, and one word from you will silence me on this subject forever." That's another INTJ trait. If you tell them something, they take you at your word. They aren't going to assume that you changed your mind until you tell them that. They don't do hints well. If you have something to say, say it. And once Elizabeth gives him the green light, bingo, they're engaged. Finally. This proposal is humble, respectful, and he's emotionally present. So he went from a confused, proud, awkward guy to someone who is at her level and is relatable. And they can finally connect from here. And this is something that you might need to be aware of if you're in love with an INTJ. It's not easy to connect with them. They don't do emotional intelligence well, generally speaking, and need to learn that you can't love with reason alone. You have to have warmth and care that the other person can feel. If you try to change your INTJ, they will buck. They don't want to be told what to do, but they will shift if they're convinced that it is beneficial and intelligent for them to do so. INTJs are system thinkers. They know that the system doesn't work if every part isn't in the appropriate place. So they will want things to be correct. They will change on a dime, even if they were completely committed to a different path, if they're shown a better way. So the big picture INTJ problem, the Darcy problem, is that there can be a big gap between what others see and what they feel inside. The closer you are to them, the smaller this gap tends to be, but it can be huge again if you're on unfamiliar ground. INTJs have their process. They don't expect you to get it or to understand it, but it works for them. So let them do it. So I've got a list of signs that an INTJ likes you. First one is that they ignore you or deny that you exist. When Mr. Darcy says that Elizabeth is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, he is saying that he noticed her. He's struggling with trying to make sense of love, which is irrational. He's intellectualizing it. So this insult or ignoring someone is a way to show that he's already noticed her. If he didn't, he wouldn't comment at all. There's a long-running joke that if an INTJ ignores you, it's a sign that they like you. This couldn't be more true. Doesn't make sense. It sounds like they don't like you, but there you go. Darcy also looks at Elizabeth a lot. He acts like he's not looking. What he's doing is observing to gather more data. INTJs don't know how to flirt. It's not their thing. For an INTJ, analysis is intimacy. Now, I don't expect the other person to get that, but that's how it feels to an INTJ. They get comfortable with distance before they can get comfortable up close. When we first see Darcy at the Meryton ball, he doesn't dance with her or anyone. We're told that he doesn't dance, but he does ask Lizzie to dance at the Netherfield ball. This is a huge compliment because the INTJ don't do social games. They don't do small talk. He's stepping out of his comfort zone to join her in hers, and this is a huge INTJ compliment. He does the same thing when he chats with Elizabeth at Netherfield when Jane is recuperating. When he talks about her reading or just makes small talk, he's sharing space with her because genuine emotional vulnerability feels risky, and it's also not the space or time for it. Caroline is trying to flirt with him, and he's politely putting her off while trying to compliment Elizabeth. So he doesn't want to directly expose his feelings, but he's making an attempt to be emotionally closer. Another example of INTJ flirting is his long letter addressing her complaints after his first proposal. This isn't him defending himself. Love is clarity, understanding, and honesty. And this is an INTJ attempt at showing respect while also being vulnerable. It's Darcy's way of saying, you deserve to know the truth. Another example of INTJ flirting is when he rescues Lydia. It's private, low-key, and self-sacrificing. It's a big gesture without any drama. INTJ love is also treating you with respect. When Lizzie says she doesn't like him, he accepts it. That's it. He doesn't beg, doesn't try to change her mind, doesn't stalk her. He trusts that she knows her mind, and he accepts it. Period. He's rational and logical and gives her space to be the same. There's one hidden sign of INTJ affection that is more obvious in the Keira Knightley version of Pride and Prejudice. When Darcy gives Elizabeth a hand getting into the carriage and holds her hand for just a second longer than necessary, it's a big tell. INTJs don't tend to be touchy or physically affectionate in public or with strangers, so little gestures like that, big tell. If you're still unsure if they like you, just ask them. They'll tell you. They tend to be honest, forthright, and respectful because they value integrity and they want the same from you. So INTJs make really great friends. If you're not sure if this is your cup of tea, just stay friends. They will be with you through thick and thin. So why do we still love Mr. Darcy after 2 centuries? He's kind of a dud. As a romantic lead, he's awkward, insulting, and cold, right? In the end, Mr. Darcy's love story isn't about grand gestures or poetic speeches. It's about transformation through quiet devotion. He shows us that real love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it stands silently in the corner, watching, protecting, thinking. For all his reserve and pride, Darcy embodies a kind of love that's deliberate, principled, and deeply loyal. The love of someone who sees you clearly, even when you can't yet say it out loud, that's him. And that's why, more than 2 centuries later, we still love Mr. Darcy. Beneath the restraint and intellect lies a heart capable of deep feelings and moral courage. He's the archetype of the thoughtful lover, the one who grows, changes, and loves with integrity. He embodies trust. In a world that often confuses noise with passion, Darcy reminds us that the quiet kind of love, the kind that acts, reflects, and endures, is still the most romantic of all. So I hope you've enjoyed the show today. If so, please let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to see me talk about Elizabeth, let me know that too. Thanks for being here. Ciao.